Hey there, welcome to the Flicks Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. This episode we have Netflix 98th film. It's the 2018 comedy Father of the Year. It's directed by Tyler Spindel. It stars David Spade, Nat Faxon, Joey Bragg, Matt Shively, Bridgit Mendler, and Jared Sandler. I am Jesse and joined as usual with MJ. How you doing?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Oh, good. I'm excited to do another podcast. This is one of my favorite parts of the week, so
Just
looking forward to
hearing you
chatting with you.
say number 98 got me. Like, I'm at a point where when I write some notes on a film, I'm starting to put the number of the film ahead of it.
Yep.
And I know,
Hmm.
like, Netflix has pumped out about 250, 300 films at the moment, but where we're at right now. But the fact that we've done 98 and we're so close to that done, it's blowing my mind.
It's yeah. I mean, when we started it, I thought, we might do 20 or 30 and see how we go, and we're still rocking on, which is good
Still
because
going.
as usual, watching movies that I probably wouldn't take the time to watch, that
Mhm.
sort of forces you to watch these films that you're probably like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to watch it.
It's very true. And, since we started it, everyone else has brought out their own sort of streaming services with Disney Plus, and then HBO Max is coming. And it's nice to say that we're sort of on board with one of the first streamers who understood that there was going to be competition, and started to make their own original products. And we've got a pretty good eye or a pretty good understanding on what Netflix have actually put out there as their original stuff. And I kind of like having that knowledge.
We sure do. We've got, yeah, I mean, even though they've probably got another 200 on top of the 100 we've nearly done, it's nice to have a little bit of a sample size of what's
Yeah, you
sitting
get a
out there
flavor.
that, yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's get into this one where we start off with our fast flicks and do our quick little summary of the film. MJ, what's your fast flicks for Father of the Year?
So it is a David Spade comedy, where his son comes back to their hometown after graduating college, and a couple of weeks of sort of PG hijinks take place between relevant friends and families.
Yeah, it's a
It
good
wasn't
little
much of a plot.
Yeah, I agree. This is one where I had to go, okay, I'm going to try and define it. And the underlying sort of thing that sort of sat there, the whole thing for me was that it's really two fathers that want to prove to their sons that they're the best. And I don't know,
Mm.
that's just part of, like, and there's so many other things going on like you've mentioned, but to me that's the gist that I took from it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I kind of think like, how would I tell someone about this film? And yeah, like plot wise, is not really gonna, and not that it's because it's a bad plot or anything. It's just because there's not much of a plot. I think the stuff that happens in the film is got the good things that you'll take out of the film have got little to do with the plot of the film.
Yes, that is a very good call. So, what were you able to discover or learn about this one? Putting together the story or anything like that? Because I reckon you'll do a good job with this one.
Well, this is pretty run of the mill. So it's one of the Happy Madison movies. So we know that Netflix and Happy Madison and in turn Adam Sandler work very close together on a slate of films. They've got obviously the four Sandler films that they had, and then they signed on for another four. They got his stand up comedy, and Happy Madison, obviously very famous for doing a lot of David Spade stuff as well. So this is another Happy Madison movie that basically Netflix slated nice and early. It was always their film. They didn't have to buy it off anybody else. And I don't know if it's these films that may not have been as popular or big. They just don't have a lot of information on them. So from what I can gather, it was really smooth sailing because in July 2017, they basically announced the entire cast. The film was going to be called "Who Do You Think Would Win?"
Yep.
Um, they eventually retitled that to Graduates, and
Yep.
then later on they called it Father of the Year, which is the film we have now. So they filmed it in Boston, or just an hour outside of Boston, in June 2017, and we were watching it on Netflix in July 2018. So there's not too much more to know about it.
You've taken quite a lot of the stuff that the only things that I sort of had as well. The only other thing that I sort of picked up on the writing of this one was so it was co-written by the director Tyler Spindel as well as Coyner, I think his name is. So he got the idea of this story with partly from his idea of dads getting up all getting all up in arms over whose dad would win a fight. So it sort of had a little bit of a story where they sit around and probably, you know, you're having a couple of beers and you're like, oh yeah, whose dad's going to win in a fight? And he's like, cool, I'll make a movie about that. Yeah, so there's
You make it out like it's like a normal. I've never had that conversation with any of my mates.
me either. Like I don't know whether it's because I don't think Paulie my father or anything, but it's not the sort of thing that I'd sit around and be like, hey, MJ, do you reckon your dad would take
I'm
my
thinking
dad?
about it now, but it's not. I can't believe you'd be like, oh, everyone talks about that. Let's make a film about it, kind of thing. Like,
I'd take your dad over some other dad, so you could have this argument, I reckon.
yeah, I'd be
Yeah.
curious now. I think about it. He'd go all right, but you know he's
Yeah.
a bit older now. I, mean, I guess that's the premise, isn't it? Dads get a bit older, who would win?
Yeah.
I don't know. Now you got me thinking.
I had a Netflix percentage match for this one, which
Oh yeah,
which
what'd you
was,
have?
yeah, 56%. So a little bit on the lower end,
Okay.
but I enjoy seeing that pop up every now and then when we have one to see. Hey, yeah, maybe you might not want to watch this one, so that's where
I had a 78% match. So
good.
um, I was
So
thinking Netflix, if with their original content, they shouldn't be putting low numbers on there because they should try and get people to watch it, even though it goes against the authenticity of. Even though we don't know much about how we get this percentage match, but even though it goes against it, but 78% for me was pretty high.
that's the headline of the episode. MJ calls calls Netflix to self-regulate. They need to regulate our percentage matches. It's going to be all over
It's
the internet
clickbait.
tomorrow.
We should, yeah, we should do that. Yeah.
All right. What were you able to find out about the consensus for this one, critical and audience-wise?
Um, it's not great, but you know what? It's got a 5.2 out of 10 on IMDb, which I'm calling par for a movie like this.
Hmm.
If people are going on there and saying it's over 2.5 out of 5, over 5 out of 10, they weren't overly disappointed. I just can't see anybody thinking this film is going to be a like a 4-star film. So if they're getting 2.5s and over 2.5s, I think that's a win. That was off over 9,000 ratings. So, a decent amount of people have seen it. Not huge numbers, but 9,000 is nothing to sneeze at.
Oh.
Letterboxd is a fair bit more tempered. It's 2 out of 5. Often we do see IMDb being a little bit higher than Letterboxd, but that's quite a big difference. So the Letterboxd audience certainly weren't on board with that. They've got just over 3,000 ratings, so it's not a very popular movie. There's not a great consensus, but there is a general audience that didn't hate it.
Yeah, well, the Google users liked this one. This was at 84%, which is a little bit higher than we've seen recently. So back up to that
Yeah,
higher
nice.
sort of range. Rotten Tomatoes, this one's an interesting one.
They're gonna hate it.
Yeah, I reckon you may have seen this. This was sort of plastered all over the internet. This one sits at 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. So has 11 reviews. So sitting there rotten, no consensus, but a big fat 0. Doesn't do the world of wonders if you want people to jump on and sort of watch a film based on Rotten Tomatoes. The audience did have it at a similar sort of range as IMDb, I guess, at 51%, but that was only on 350 odd reviews, but definitely higher
Can you remind
than
me
the
again?
critics.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can you remind me again the critical analysis? Because I think very little of Rotten Tomatoes and their scoring system. To get 0, does every single reviewer have to give it a tick or a minus, or does they have to give it a certain number, and if it doesn't get over that number, it doesn't get a percentage? Or
I think they collate it based on that 59% and over percentage. So because some critic reviewers mark out of 5, some do it out of 10, some do it out of 4.
Yep.
So I think they base it on that percentage, and then if it's under that percentage, then it's a rotten review, which then gives them the overall amount of reviews. So every one of the 11 reviewers on here would have had it at under 60%. So what's that?
okay,
A 3 out of 5. Is that about right? Yeah. Yeah. So
okay,
all under a 3 out of 5. Yeah. So some of them
just don't love it.
all of them may have had given it a 2.5, but that still makes it rotten.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it? It's such an imperfect science, and I just hate it that it just gets plastered around everywhere. It's Rotten Tomatoes. It's the gospel. I don't know. Good on them they've done something right.
Yeah, it's and I've said this before. It frustrates the living daylights out of me, and it even happened today in class at school. You know, we're looking at some Australian sort of films and Australian content, and you discuss a film,
Mm.
and the first thing you hear in the back of the room, oh, that's sitting on 98%. So all of a sudden they're like, oh, cool, I'm intrigued in this a little bit, and I'm like, let's not. And that's a part of Google's fault as well, is that it sits there bang at the top of whenever you search something. So yeah, it's massively frustrating, and I don't. There's no solution because it's just sort of embedded in culture now that you check Rotten
It is, yeah.
Tomatoes to, and I know that a lot of people use Letterboxd now, which is great, but yeah, the same stage. Like yeah, Rotten Tomatoes is definitely enshrined in the way that people search and look for films to see what that percentage is, and movie studios are a little bit at fault for this too, because they plaster it on their film posters saying certified fresh or um,
Yeah.
all those types of things. But yeah, that's a discussion for another day, I guess.
Yeah, no, we bring it up periodically on a
Yeah.
discussion. I enjoy talking about it, but yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we should get into our early thoughts for this one. So, what are your early thoughts for Father of the Year?
Well, I think so. This movie delivers on, and dare I say, exceeds expectations. If you go into this film and you're expecting Casablanca and you're disappointed with a David Spade led teen comedy, then I don't even want to talk to you about it. I did the same thing last week with How It Ends. I read these reviews on Letterboxd and people were hating it for what it is. And it's like, well, hang on, well, you're almost at fault for going into the movie thinking that. So I
Mm,
kind of didn't mind it in that sense. Like it wasn't the best movie I've ever seen. It was never gonna be, but I found each character was either, let's say the main four characters was either funny or I was interested in them enough, and I just enjoyed the lightness of the tone throughout the entire film. Like there were some shocking moments in this and some really bad scenes, but generally I just think it was really easy to watch, and I found myself laughing on a lot of occasions. And I'm not going to even mention the occasions. I stopped writing them down, but
mm,
um, with what they had to work with, I actually think they did a pretty good job because, as I said earlier, the plot is pretty bad or like almost non-existent. But and you talk about this all the time, Jesse. How you love the idea of just being able to hang with these characters, and whilst these aren't Tarantino-esque characters, they were comfortable for me to hang around with, and the overall mood and the vibe just worked. And if I was to break it down critically, then we'd be walking out of here with a one-star film. But I need to listen to how I felt. And when I turned this off, I felt all right. I didn't mind it. So, yeah, I'm enjoying figuring out what I didn't mind about this film, and this conversation will help with that.
Good. Well, it's been a while, but everything you have said, I completely agree with. Like I am
Yes!
exact. I'm in exactly the same boat, and this had red flashing lights from the get go for me to be one of those films that I was like going to tear apart and be like, this is ridiculously bad. But like when you see a film like this, like you mentioned, you go into it with knowing that it's not going to be the best film you've ever seen, but you go in going, okay, I just need to have a bit of a good time with this, and I was expecting this to be really bad, and it
Mm,
kind of was, but it kind of wasn't. Like I had
mhm,
enough laughs throughout that I was engaged, and like you mentioned too, the characters, there weren't any characters that you completely hated, so that's a
mhm,
positive because yes, they had jokes that may not have landed, or traits that you don't agree with, or things that really annoyed you, but at the same time they still had this likability to them a little bit, and I think that's really like that's a good sign from this film, is that if you can find a little bit of relatability or a little bit of being able to connect or like a character in the film, and you don't have any that stand out that bring it right down for you, then it's doing an okay job. So yeah, I think we might have a bit of a fun discussion today on this one.
That is so good because this whole time I was thinking, okay, Jesse's gonna hate it, and I need to be able to articulate what I liked about it, which hasn't been easy, but I was thinking, and I remember thinking, if Jesse likes this film, we're gonna have so much fun talking about it. So this is a wonderful result. I reckon there was a 20% chance of us being here, and here we are. So I'm going to run with it.
Good, because yeah, I mean there's a lot in it that I didn't like as well. So I'm not gonna
Yeah,
shy away from that. But there's enough in it that I did like that. Yeah, we can have a positive chat about this one, I think. All right,
yeah.
so character time. Hit us off with, you mentioned before that there's four main characters. So hit us off with your first character that you'd like to discuss.
Well, let's talk about Wayne first, only because it's David Spade and he's kind of like the headline act. I'm not a David Spade fan in general. I don't really find him that funny, and I wasn't really looking forward to this movie because he was the main man in it. But I think this character worked for me for two reasons. One, he wasn't in as many scenes as I was expecting. I think you could easily argue that Marty is probably almost the lead character, and all four of these leads do share a pretty equal bite of the pie. But
Mm.
two, I just think this character was more or less humor for the sake of humor. And because they removed any real stakes about him being a deadbeat dad within the first scene, because Ben knew what he was, Ben never really cared that he wasn't more, and he never really needed anything from him, then I could just enjoy the stupidness for what it was. I didn't need him to be this good guy or have this redeeming quality that he had to really come from a long way back to be a good dad. It didn't matter. None of it mattered. And I was cool with that. And I'm glad that Ben was cool with that because that just made me go, all right, I'm just going to enjoy it. And I think that's
Yeah,
why it worked.
yeah. I liked little bits about him that, yeah, like you mentioned, that the setup of him straight away was that he's not going to be anything more than this deadbeat sort of character. And I like these little clues that we got along the way that, at some stage in Ben's life, his son, like, he was his hero. There's these posters on the wall about, Dad, you're my
Mm,
hero. And now, this feeling that he's a disappointment to his son. So, uh, yeah, not being invited to the graduation, those types of things. And I just really connected with him early on where he's, made this comment, and, it's probably meant to be more of a joke, but he said, about his being colorblind. And he made this comment like, if everyone was colorblind, we could all get along better. And there's no
yeah.
reason why everyone can't get along with Wayne, because yes, he's a little bit down and out. He's got these issues with him, alcohol, drugs, that sort of stuff. But
Mm.
he's not a spiteful sort of person. Whatever
No,
he's
he's not.
doing, but he's got intentions for what he's doing, and whether that's to protect his image, to look out for his son, whatever. Like, there wasn't and like I mentioned this earlier, there wasn't a part of me that disliked him for any of his actions. And I think that was
Yeah.
really important with him. So yeah, I agree with you on Wayne.
I
Kicking to
like the
Ben.
way you summed that up. Yeah.
What? Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, Ben and Larry I kind of almost put together a little bit because I think what helped this movie work was their somewhat like nonchalant behavior to just put my mind at ease. Like they were never too stressed. Even though that Ben had all this bad stuff that happened to him, I never felt like he cared that much. I think maybe that might have been the Meredith factor that if everything goes wrong, he can stay in town with her. And it just meant that I could sit back and watch it in comfort and waiting for the next laugh because he was a pretty cool dude, and he was sorry, cool's the wrong word because he was not very suave and anything like that. But I just liked him. He was easy and simple, and it just helped with the mood of the film.
Yeah, I think he was very confident in who he was. And
Yeah.
you see this when he sees Meredith at that sort of bar straight away, where he's like, asking for a number straight up, and he didn't care what other people thought about him, and he was happy to even though he's obviously tried to get out of this town because he's put his time into his study, and he wanted to distance himself from his father a little bit. I enjoyed that. So Ben was almost like Marty, who was Larry's father, and Larry was more like Wayne, like the sons sort of reflected the
Mm.
opposite fathers, and I thought that was kind of done quite nicely. And especially, and I'm going to lead now into Marty because he was the complete opposite of Wayne. Obviously, he's got a job,
Mm.
doing well in his job. He's
He's got a
been able
job.
to. I know. What are we coming to in a world where I'm saying that's a positive of the character there? But
But that's an opposite of someone.
yeah, but he, even though he's got this sort of the younger, was he his stepson or his actual son, the younger one? I couldn't that Aiden kid.
I, I
Um,
I think it was
yeah,
his stepson.
his stepson. Yeah,
I
so
think him
even though
and
he's
him and Larry were father and son, and they married
son
into the
to
wife and the stepson.
wife and his son, yeah. So even though he's got these sort of little issues at home with his stepson, Aiden, like he still had his stuff together more than than obviously Wayne did. And I
Mm.
just liked that stark contrast, I guess.
Yeah, Marty for me was a guy that I could really get behind because I thought David Spade was funny, but almost he was for me he was almost like a background piece, and that the awkward wiener but Ned Flanders nice guy kind of father role that Marty was. It can be a real winner in comedies, but it's hard to get right. And I think something like a Will Ferrell nails it in Daddy's Home, and I reckon Nat Faxon, who plays Marty, gets it really right here because he truly lent into this sort of role. We kind of had no doubt about his stance on any issue that was going to happen, and you knew where it was going to go because you were so familiar with what this kind of character would do in this situation. And I just enjoyed seeing it all unfold, particularly around when he saw Wayne at the clinic, and he just gets terrified, like he's a ten year old kid on the school ground about to get beaten up, and when he took the drugs, like these are things that you know are going to happen because he's created this character that you're so sure about, and it's just still hilarious when it happens. So Marty was huge for the success of this film.
Yeah, and he reminded me very much of like Stu from Hangover.
Yeah, and
Um,
yeah, I thought the same thing
yeah,
too.
like that Ed Helms sort of character. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was that very much that sort of role. So yeah, I agree. All right, move on to Larry. I think Larry's the next
yeah,
one that we sort of touch on, and this is the same as what I was mentioning before. Like he was. You've got Ben, who's got these goals, these career, he's got this job lined up in New York, and Larry again, he's the complete opposite. He's got these no goals. He's heading to New York just to be with his friend, and he's this forgotten son that everything that is brought up about him with anyone else in this world or this movie is about Aiden, that little stepson that obviously there's photos of him at his
mm,
dad's work, and the colleagues there are like, oh, you're the son that he always talks about. And it's like, no, that's
yeah,
Aiden. And I really liked that they had this conclusion where he had
mm,
this idea of joining the Marines, and he didn't want to be like his dad, and he's sort of getting switched on, and that same comparison again where you've got Ben, who obviously means a lot to his dad Wayne because he's constantly texting him, and it was just another nice little difference between the two. Yeah.
I love it when he texts him and he always signs off with his name, and then sometimes he spells his name wrong.
Yeah, good. All right, anything else about Larry that you got?
No, I think you summed it up. Yeah, I kind of loved how chilled he was and comfortable he was with his decisions, and I do like that they planted that Marine seed early on when there was that
Mm,
Marine at the pub at the start, and he's like, "No way, I wouldn't do that to a Marine. That guy's a Marine." Like as if he holds him in high regard,
mm.
and that kind of was a trigger to be like, "Oh, hang on, maybe I could be someone that I
Really?
respect like
Yeah. I'll briefly mention. I thought that Aiden, the step kid, he was hilarious. He had some of my favorite scenes,
that."
and I'm looking forward to talking about him later. You got Meredith, the love interest, and I thought like she was a nice, fun, sort of cute character that you could just get on board with. She was just sweet, and it was just nice to have that rather than you didn't have time for a breakup or an argument in this relationship, and it was just
Mm,
nice to see that in a film for a change.
good call.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was fun. She was confident. She nudes up like really early on for the guy. Like she's she just made it really easy.
Yeah. All right. The director. Did you want to talk about Tyler Spindel?
What's he done? I forgot to
Oh,
check.
he's good. All right. I got a little bit on him, which is good. So this was his first feature. He has two films this year. So he's got one called The Deported, which I hadn't heard of, but his other film this year is one that's just hit Netflix very recently called The Wrong Missy. And it's
Oh,
also
yep.
with David Spade, and I copped
Hey,
a
yeah,
lot of advertisements about that, and I'm
yep.
pretty sure that that sits pretty low on the critical consensus as well. Um, he's acted in a couple of like these sorts of comedies that we see from Happy Madison production. So he was a
Yep.
character in Paul Blart. He was a character in House Bunny, Jack and Jill. So he's obviously got that connection with Happy Madison. And
Hmm.
obviously the biggest thing that you need to take out of this is that it's Adam Sandler's nephew. um,
Oh,
so
is it?
yeah, so yeah, he's the son of Sandler's sister. So
Okay. I mean, I love how Adam Sandler looks after his own. He
yeah,
really does.
so yeah, so he's and I read an interview where he talked about the support that he's sort of given him, since he had this idea that he wanted to go into film early on, and just how supportive he's been having him be on the sets of films and those types of things. So a nice little sort of side thing to acknowledge that, hey, yeah, this is a relative of Sandler.
Ah, I like that. And we also had Adam Sandler's wife in this movie, and we had Jared Sandler. Is Jared Sandler as another different nephew, or?
I think so. Was that the biker kid, Nathan? I think it was him. Was that him, or was he
Yeah,
towards the end?
yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, he was one of those
And as a
characters,
biker guy.
the biker guy. Yeah, yeah. So
I think
yes,
I think he's a nephew or something.
yeah. So good little connections to that Happy Madison family. All right, scene time. This is where we can get some laughs. I'm hoping some scenes that made us giggle and enjoy this a little bit. So what are some ones that you liked, MJ?
Well, I've got three main scenes, and each of those scenes has lots of things in them that just added up to making them really good scenes. So initially, it was the opening scene for me that I initially just liked the casual lightness, which actually made the whole thing pretty seamless to ease into. When I was like, I don't really want to watch this comedy starring David Spade, I was over that within the first couple of minutes, and then that scene was really compounded by where they had the electric beater in the pool to make it a jacuzzi. I thought that was really funny. And then when he was naked in the truck, and then the truck drives off, and then he falls out of the truck, it's just this little naked dude in a trailer park. I was like, this movie could be all right.
Yeah, I didn't like the setup. I didn't like that whole setup with that pool in the ute at all. But as soon as the lady started driving it and he was being thrown around, that was hilarious. I was laughing. That was so funny.
It's so good. The second scene for me was basically the whole scene at the lab when Larry's working at the lab. Firstly, with Olivia, the lab assistant, when she had those erect nipples at the start when she was talking to Larry and talking about it. Clearly, she was super into him. And then I just found it funny that Wayne didn't recognize Marty at all, and, and Marty
He
just
blacks
couldn't
out.
figure it out. And even when they're talking about it, Wayne's like, he's like, so you don't remember me at all? And he's like, no. And they go off and talk about it. Wayne just giving him the finger in the background, just like this little smart ass. And then because Marty got so scared, and Larry was like, did you shoot yourself? He's like, yeah, a little bit. But then the piece de resistance of that scene is when he's doing the nipple checks and he's blowing on them and putting the cream on them, and then Olivia's standing in the line at the end because she wants him to do it.
I didn't like that. But we'll talk about
Oh,
that
did he? When I saw her standing there, I was gone. I thought that was so funny. That's a shame.
What else?
The final one for me was when Marty and Larry take drugs. That whole scene in the laundry was great. It topped off again. Like Marty was just everything I wanted him to do. He did, and that's what I loved about him as a character. But just he's like, "Can I jump in your laundry?" And he's just like, "No." And he's like, "I got to do it." But then when they're eating the mum's hair, and when they run out, they grab the dirty laundry, and he's getting him to rub his beard on his back, and it was, I don't know. I just thought it was really funny.
Did you wait? Did you sit through the whole credits?
Uh, I did. I'm sure I did. What did I
Well,
miss?
like just as before the Netflix logo came on at the end, they played that line again where he's like, "Can I just rub my face on your back, my beard on your back?" Whatever it was, just as like an outgoing line. They played that.
It's
Cool.
so
All right.
funny. I just
Yeah.
that were the three big scenes for me.
I've got a couple of other little bits and pieces. So I thought that, like I mentioned before, Aiden, like most of the scenes with him in it, I laughed out loud. The first one was they set Marty up as this guy in his house who's worrying about a humidifier in the room, and I was just like, okay, this guy's a bit whack. And then he asked if Aiden had pissed in it. Like I was just like killing myself laughing. I thought that was so funny. Um,
Wasn't there another one? He's like, I don't remember, and he's like, yeah, would have remembered if you had taken your penis out.
Yeah, I do have that. That was they had that mediation, and Aiden's there, but Aiden says, like, they're talking about what you should do because you need some goals, and the little stepbrother goes, well, you could do gay porn, and then Marty he gets his coffee cup and he's like, oh, this tastes a bit like piss, and then he's like, surely you would remember if you put your penis in my cup.
That's great.
Yeah, so I thought that was really good. I didn't really enjoy that scene you mentioned before with the cream on the nipples and stuff, but just that cut after that straight to Wayne in the sort of trailer park with his son, and he's got this set of boobs. I was like, oh my god, I did not expect that at all.
I nearly put that in.
Yeah,
nearly put that in. I'm glad you mentioned it.
Very, very funny. I enjoyed the little side story of Ben and Meredith, like just taking her to the prom because she'd never been to a prom, and the whole
Yeah.
idea of him taking that advice from his dad to use the dimples on the back to make a move, and
Mm.
I just thought that was nice, like a nice little one away from a few of the laughs that I had.
He was pretty
And
smooth, old Ben.
yeah, And it was just nice that he actually like took some advice from his father, rather than
Mm.
thinking of him as this sort of dropkick. I thought
Hmm.
there's a scene where Marty's hiding in this hotel because he's so petrified of Wayne, and just when Wayne knocks on the door, and then Marty comes out with him with a taser, and he just falls off the balcony, and that was classic. That was
Hang on,
really
what
really
does
good.
Wayne say though? Wayne says something like, "You've got like a robot punch. That's not normal," or something.
Yeah. That was fantastic. And I also like the follow on where they sort of have this agreement, like that Wayne says, I'll let you beat me up, and then there's just this conversation. They're in the barber shop, and just like I didn't pick up on it at first. I had to pause it and go back because I wasn't paying attention to them actually fighting outside the window, and I only realized they were out there
Mm.
and once they smashed through the window. So I paused it,
Oh,
went back,
really?
and yeah, I, I was like, oh, this is hilarious. So I thought as soon as he went through the window and like throwing hair at him and stuff, I thought that was really funny.
You must have
And
been
then
like, "This is such a boring scene." Larry talking to his hairdresser.
hairdresser, yeah, I wasn't paying attention. And then finally that party at the end for the
Mm.
son going off to join the Marines, and just they made a mention earlier about they're talking about Marty's talking about I'm going to put my piss in your water gun, and then Aiden's just pouring this water gun in the mouth of this kid. Oh wow, that really got me. That was really good. Okay,
Uh,
all right. What are some things that you maybe didn't like in this one?
all right. This was all some of just the stuff that just went a bit too far. It just wasn't that funny. So the scene where Wayne firstly is chasing chasing Marty around the house trying to fight
Yeah,
him. That was just a bit silly. Didn't really work. Could have been something fun done with that, but could have been a lot better.
yeah,
Um, when Ben finds a skeleton in the backyard of the
mm,
mailman when he's digging the pool, like that's yeah, because I'm like, this is a huge thing. She's like murdered someone, and I didn't find it funny. And I'm like, you can't just like drop something like that there. I'm like, oh, this is going to change the whole story. It's like, oh no, it's just like a little joke that I didn't think was very funny.
yeah. I had that as well. Like just that wink from the old lady in the window. I was just like, yeah,
Yeah,
didn't land with me either. So
yeah,
I agree
didn't
with that
land.
one.
Yeah, good, well said. The wife race was just ridiculous, and
Yes, wife carrying competition. Who on earth comes up with that idea? I think that's ridiculous and stupid.
yeah, and I just don't know where it fits. Was it supposed to so they had a father son moment? Because like I didn't really feel like they were that far apart. Like they were fine their relationship. So
Yeah,
that whole scene never quite added up to me. Um, and finally, the reason that Ben didn't take the job at the end was just a bit of a shit one. How he was just kind of just talking to the CEO and just like, you don't treat people like that. And that's it. And I don't know. Like I know they wanted to make him come back, and I was always expecting that to happen, but I would have liked a better reason. Like the whole thing was like, oh, he's sticking up for his dad and all that kind of stuff, but do it in a better way.
yeah. I didn't like that whole virtual reality sort of scene. Apart from when Wayne was actually like going around kicking and punching people, I thought that was pretty funny. That was pretty funny. All
Yeah, it
right,
wasn't too bad.
yeah.
It wasn't too
No,
bad.
me too. My turn. I think it's yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. I think the setup at the start that I didn't like that was a few early lines from Wayne where he's talking about because he's getting naked in this back of a truck in some water, and he's like, your whole body came out of my dick. You're not going to get sucked back inside. That didn't land for me at all. I thought that was a horrible line.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's a bad line. Yeah.
I didn't like that whole idea of Meredith being that post delivery service thing that she was doing. I thought that was really
Mm,
repetitive, where they had multiple people deliver to Ben before she actually arrived. It didn't really add
yep.
anything. It would have just been just as sweet if she had just rocked up as the first person. Um,
True.
I didn't like that cream rubbing scene at all. I know that you thought it was pretty funny, but I just that didn't sit right at all with me. I thought that was weird
It
as.
wasn't the cream itself. It was the elements around
Yeah,
that scene that
yeah.
Olivia got me. Yeah, she was hilarious.
um, Ben and Meredith, when they do that skinny dipping and they're reenacting that first kiss or whatever, and that whole thing about things sucking their legs and stuff, that I was just like,
Mm.
didn't add anything, wasn't funny. If they had have shown like this Loch Ness monster or something that was like a gag or something, that would have been funny, but it didn't really land with anything
It's a
at
good
all.
point. That scene just kind of ended, and we never went back to it. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. Should have at least shown something to make it funny.
funny. Yeah, I didn't like the reveal of the Marty's true story about that flasher that apparently, he's the one person that he's beat up, like just about legs around his face and scrotums on his face. It just didn't laugh. I didn't find that funny.
I love the extent that they like. Instead of him beating up the guy, he got completely bullied into taking him around the whole town. Like it was
Yep.
the exact opposite of the story. I thought he was going to be like, "Oh yeah, no, I went to hit him and he tripped over him." And no, like he bullied him into flashing every. I think he was on like a flashing record or something. I think just the magnitude of that story, it just kept growing, and I that's what I found funny. The like the thighs around the neck and stuff wasn't great, but
No.
he's just such a bitch.
the You liked bits of this scene, but that drug dealer scene in that sort of dungeon or basement or whatever it was, like that whole "put your beard on my back," and then I was like, okay, we've done that joke, and then as they're leaving and they start eating the mum's hair, like that was just weird. I didn't find that funny. And the last thing was I didn't like that whole sex line with Larry having sex with the old lady to get those charges dropped. That was just
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah, I don't know. That was just weird. And then just as a final gag, they try to show Wayne jumping out the window before he comes in, sort of thing. I was like, yeah, that whole
That was
thing
funny when Wayne said now it's 3 because he was saying how he'd slept with 2 women before. I thought that was pretty good.
Good. All right. Well, time for us to talk about some things that this movie was trying to say. I don't know what we're going to pull out of this one, but what are some ideas or some themes, MJ? What have you got?
Yeah, look, the movie didn't really jump out at me thematically, but
really,
I think it's important. Like they weren't trying to talk about the idea of discovering what's important in your life and not doing something because you think you should or because that's the path that's been set out for you. And they do that obviously with Ben, with his job and just assuming that he had to leave town to go to college and just assuming that he had to take a big job. And even with Marty when he with Larry, don't do what everyone else is telling you to do. And they actually have that nice little scene with Marty and Larry in the hotel room when he's like, "Mate, I just want you to do whatever you want to do, and I'll support you 100%." And then he has that power to make his own decisions. So that's probably the main thing that you do take out of it.
Yep, I agree. Standing up for yourself, doing what you want to do, following your ideas, even if it's not the way that you thought you had to do it. And just going back to that idea of why this film was put together, I guess, like a little bit about manhood too, and this dad versus dad argument, and men, and they're trying to beef each other up, I guess, and it even goes through to that final scene where they're like, okay, let's just finally actually fight, run bang into each other. So that's all I could really pull from this one as well. This isn't the kind of movie that you're supposed to be pulling too much out of either. So I think we've done all right with that one.
Yeah, I agree. You're not going to watch this film and start making some really big life decisions off the back of it.
No. All right. What did you take away from this one?
Well, look, I'm going to remember this movie as one that I did have a lot of laughs and I was quietly impressed. And we spoke a couple of weeks back about that movie that you can put on in the background. I reckon I could have a stab at this being one of those movies that you just chuck on and you might be doing the dishes or tidying the house or whatever it is and just having a movie on in the background, because I'd still actually have some reservations about recommending it. I'm well aware that it wouldn't be everyone's cup of tea, and there was probably a unique set of circumstances that did make it work for me, and the characters just worked. I can't imagine them necessarily working for everyone, but it's certainly living in its ideal habitat on Netflix, and we know that Happy Madison have found a nice little niche in that spot as well. So a lot of it just makes sense.
Yep, I agree. They only sort of like maybe there were a few too many of these little side characters that were the friends that they probably could have cut, and then we could have had more time on the main characters. Like we could have got rid of that kid on the bike who wanted to be a biker. We could have got rid of the kid with the long hair who was like a little bit TJ, whatever his name was. So yeah, and then you could have had an extra couple of minutes on the the nice moments between Meredith and Ben and things like that. But yeah, that's all I could really pull from this one about what I could have done. Yeah. All right. IMDb time. Did you get onto IMDb to check anyone out?
Yeah, I did. I jumped on for Marty, who's played by Nat Faxon. I know you are saying he reminds me of Ed Helms with bad teeth, and he sounds like John Lithgow. But he's in a lot of stuff. So he's in a lot of comedies, whether it be TVs and movies. I think I would have seen him in Sex Tape and Bad Teacher. But did you know he also helped adapt the screenplay for The Descendants, and he has an
That
Academy Award?
yes, I was I did read that, and I was thinking maybe you might pick up on that. So I thought that was a good little fact. Yeah, George Clooney. That was the George Clooney Descendants one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's yeah. I was impressed that he's able to yeah because I enjoyed that film. That was a good film.
Oh yeah, it was a good film. It's a good book too. I read the book before I watched it.
Watch it. Yeah,
Just a nice story.
good. All right. I got on as well. It's been a while since I've got on.
Mm.
The last few films we've only
Yeah, it
had
has.
sort of a few little characters, so there haven't been a lot of side characters for me to sort of recognize. And I just this is it started off as I just need to confirm something, so I did a pause. So it was with that scene we spoke about, that wife carrying competition that neither of us really liked, but that sort of villain
Mm.
dude, his name was Jeff, and
Mm.
straight away I've gone, you are from Brooklyn Nine, you're Vulture. And I looked it up, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it was him, and also he's in SVU, and I've mentioned that before on this show that my wife loves Law and Order SVU, and we've watched
Mm.
pretty much all those seasons. So yeah, he's Detective Brian Cassidy in that show as well, Dean Winters. So yeah, good IMDb for me because I was happy just to confirm that yes, that was Vulture. I think he's hilarious in
Good
Brooklyn
one. Yeah, it
Nine-Nine.
was the Vulture. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a
Hmm.
weird role in this film. What a bizarre character they've just. It's like Wayne had a villain this whole time, and that was him, but he wasn't in any other scene. Like that's
No.
how it felt.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Have you got any questions that you'd like to ask in this one?
I have one question, and you can't really answer it because it's stupid. But why was there a pelican in the VR that, like, just obviously that's what threw Wayne off and had him running around? But why was it there in the first place?
Yeah, I was expecting to see like a
Because it was
bird flying
attacking
around the
him.
office or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was expecting to see something flying around, but maybe that's just all the drug and alcohol abuse coming to rear its ugly head.
Okay, yeah, maybe. I
I
just
don't know. I
it
really
was
don't
all
know.
well and good. I'm like, why is it here? It's just to throw him off.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that was a little bit weird.
Bizarre.
um, the so I've already spoken about this a little bit, but do you think that Ben and Larry were the more grown up or more adult characters in this film rather than the fathers?
Interesting. I mean, you take Wayne out, like
Yeah,
it's
obviously
whether
you take
like
Wayne out.
Marty's Marty's a pretty good man of the house and obviously provides well for his family. He's a responsible guy, but he's obviously lacking that, masculinity and ability to stand up for himself. So
Yeah,
in that
that's
sense,
what.
yes, but
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because like, even though Larry, he doesn't have these goals or anything, he's still very loyal as a friend. He's still going to New York with his friend. He helps him with the pool, all these types of things. And then yeah, you do see that side of Marty that even though he's the man of the house and he provides, he gets shut down by his tiny little stepson, and
yeah.
his wife shut him down. He's so petrified that he goes and locks himself up in a hotel for a few days, and he's happy to lie to his son about the one sort of big fight that sort of makes him a man. So
Mm.
and I don't we never saw Larry lie, we never saw Ben lie, so I don't know, I just thought that was an interesting sort of little take on it, to see maybe these two guys had their heads a lot more screwed on than the older generation.
It's a good take too, because that's the thing. Like, as much as Marty and Wayne are more of the humor, Ben and Larry are almost like the heart of the film that makes it makes it work, makes it flow, sets that mood. So yeah, they're just as important as each other in that sense, and it's a really good take.
Only other thing I wanted to ask, Meredith, they make this deal about, I'm starting a new job tomorrow, this posting sort of service thing that she's doing, and we see that she's working at her dad's shop anyway. I didn't get that. It's just a plot device, I'm guessing, so that they could get together a little bit more. It just frustrated me that she obviously her dad could give her work, so why was she is she working two jobs, or is it, I don't know, that just got
Yeah, true. Yeah, true. Yeah, there's so many little plot things I just let go. So
yeah,
maybe
yeah, true.
apologize for not thinking about that one more.
Nah, nothing wrong with that. All right, we're ready to wrap this one up. I think we've had a good little chat, and at the end of our show, we give the film a rating out of 5 to come up with an overall Flicks Forum average. So, MJ, what are your final thoughts for this film?
Yeah, well, as you can tell, this film devoured my expectations, and despite it being far from a masterpiece, I did leave it feeling very satisfied. So it had characters that I enjoyed, it had moments that made me laugh, it had stakes that were barely set, so I could just really sit back, remain comfortable, and wait for the next chuckle. And it's 3 stars for me.
Wow, very nice, good. Well, I've based on our discussion, I'm bumping my what I had down as what I was going to give this one up a little bit because I've enjoyed it even more just chatting with you about it. So you're
I
adjusting my
like that.
score at the early points because yeah, it's not the best film I've ever seen.
Mm,
But yeah, as we're obviously been chatting about this, I'm like, okay, I think I've been a bit harsh on it. I need to give it a little bit more because it was like like you mentioned before, this is one of those films that I'm not going to complain if someone puts on in the background again. It's
mm,
not a film that I'm going to be like, oh no, please don't put that on. That's got horrible racial stereotypes or really poor crass humor. Like it's got it's the humor's okay, and I feel like they did a good job with that. The laughs were entertaining. The story wasn't too bad. Characters didn't annoy me, so I'm gonna bump it from a 2 up to a 2.5.
good
Which
man.
will give us a 2.75 average, which is fairly good for a David Spade film. Just
It's
putting it out
noble.
there.
It's a noble effort by Father of the Year.
Yeah. Oh, good. All right. Well, we are on social media. We have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have Instagram. Our posts are up weekly with our episodes. This week, I've got a question that I came up with myself, and I want to see
Mm.
what you think of this one. Would
Oh.
Adam Sandler, have been a better cast in this than Spade? Could he have put himself in this role? No.
No,
No?
no. I think he's too big.
No.
I think he's too big.
It's
I
too
think
big.
he, yep. I think he overshadows it too much. The thing I liked about the David Spade character is that it wasn't as all encompassing as I thought it might have been initially.
Okay, good. Because watching this film and then looking back on it and knowing who it was written by, who it was directed by, my thoughts are that he would have written this thinking that he could have got Adam Sandler in that role. Um, and just with the whole Boston setting, and I don't know, I just feel like this was a perfect fit for. I'm not saying that I would have preferred Sandler in it, but I just feel like that he would have been like what they wanted for this film. Yeah, I don't know, just yeah, interesting. But yeah, I agree. I think Spade fits in perfectly for this.
Yeah,
So they
interesting thought
made
though.
the right
Yeah.
choice. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Well, we're back again next week. We've got it our
Mm.
99th film next week. This is a film I have heard of and I haven't watched because I was holding out to watch it for our podcast, to be honest. So this
Oh,
is
nice.
a sci-fi from 2018, sci-fi action actually. It's
Mm.
Extinction,
Oh,
directed by Ben Young. It stars Michael Pena, Lizzie
extinction.
Kaplan, Mike Coulter, Erica Tremblay, Emma Booth, and Israel Broussard. So that's what we've got
Oof,
next week. Big cast,
it's a bit of a cast.
Extinction.
Yeah.
It is. I'm looking forward to this one. I'm hoping it doesn't let me down.
I've just finished watching Castle Rock season 2, so Lizzie Kaplan is like the main character in that. So I'm all on board the Lizzie Kaplan train right now. So that's going to work out well.
Good. Well, this is as usual. Like I don't think we've ever had an episode where I've gone, didn't like that chat, but yeah, I have actually really enjoyed this one. Not just putting it on.
The comedies really benefit from a chat. They really do. Sorry, the
Yeah.
comedies where we laughed.
Correct. Yeah, not the ones that don't land anything at all. So thank you again for catching up, and I will see you next week.
Thanks, mate. I look forward to it, and I'll see you then.